packed agenda. My name is Samantha Garrett. I'm with the Extension. I'm a dairy educator in Cleveland County. So I probably had the shortest drive this morning, 5 miles. So, I'll just quickly go over what were our agenda for the morning. Thanks for coming. This was a joint effort with the Center for Dairy Excellence and Penn State Extension. So we'll get started and we'll go Dr. Charlie Gardner and Dr. Brian Reed will talk to us a little bit. And then Paula Ledney and myself will talk about retirement planning. And then we will do our first roundtable discussion. So Dr. Charlie Gardner grew up in southern New Jersey and worked on his uncle's dairy farm. He attended the College of Agriculture at Cornell, then transferred to the Veterinary College and graduating from veterinary school in 1973. He joined the Aukermanville Veterinarian Hospital, doing mainly dairy cattle practice. He started Dairy Management Consultants in 1989, specializing in dairy herd management. Dr. Gardner became a board certified as a specialist in dairy practice in 1993 and received an MBA from Moravian College in 1999. He joined Agway in 1999, was director of Agway heifer program, and in March of 2024, he joined Cargill Animal Nutrition. He retired from Cargill in 2014 and has since worked as a farm consultant with the Center for Dairy Excellence. And Dr. Brian Reed has spent the last 36 years working on dairy farms or working with dairy farmers as a veterinarian. Since receiving his MBA in 2001, he has been also a dairy business consultant, assisting dairy families with strategic planning, profitability analysis, and farm transition planning. Dr. Reed also currently utilizes the Center for Dairy Excellence resources to assist farm families going through the farm transition.
Okay, thank you all for coming out this morning. As I heard her go through that introduction, I thought, man, that guy must be really old. Graduated from vet school in 1973, 50 years. Okay, so I'm going to be talking this morning about communication and family relationships. Do I need a microphone? I don't think so. No, I don't know about the rest speakers. They may. Okay. But communication is something that I've spent a lot of time studying and worked a lot. And I actually have passion for this topic. Why? Because changing the words we use when we're talking to other people, particularly family members, can dramatically change and improve our relationship. Really, it happens. So I'm going to try to emphasize some key concepts. One, emphasize the positive. I'll give you some examples of that. I'm going to share a concept to you that's called eye to eye, and I'll talk more about that as we go through. Now, you may know of this. I'm going to encourage you to identify and share feelings because you communicate more effectively and you get better understanding if you're willing to tell the other person what you're feeling as well as what you're thinking. I'm going to suggest that you might change your approach to criticism. So let's go with this key concept. Number one, communicate the positive. Give affirmation, give encouragement, give support. If you give lots of compliments, you'll find that you get more consideration when it's time to share a concern or a complaint, okay? If all anybody ever hears from you is complain and criticize, they tend to tune you out. But if most of the time you're giving encouragement and support and compliments, and then the day that you have to share criticism, the person more likely to kind of pay attention because this is a little different, this is a little unusual. So I'm going to give you a goal, share 10 compliments for every complaint. I shared this one time with a group at church, and the next Sunday, a guy came up to me and said, you know, Charlie, I took that to heart. Every morning I put 10 pennies in my left pocket. And every time I give a compliment, I move 1 penny to my right pocket. And every time I complain, I have to move one back. He said, my goal is to have all 10 pennies in my right pocket at the end of the day. So you might try that. The second concept I want to share with you is speak personally. Tell the other person about yourself. So this eye-to-eye concept is, first you make eye contact. We communicate much more effectively if we look somebody in the eye. And if they're looking away, encourage them, just say, hey, look at me, please. And begin your sentence with the word I. I'll give you some examples of this in a minute. And then to share a thought with the other, or better yet, feeling. Feeling, tell them what's going on inside, and it tends to build and strengthen relationships. So I'm going to give you 3 applications of speaking personally. The first one will be sharing an affirmation or praise and ways to make it stronger and more personal. Then I'll talk to you about how we can share concern or a complaint that will reduce defensiveness and resentment. And finally, just a way to build understanding. So let's start with the first one, sharing affirmation and praise. Suppose you have a person working for you, excuse me, or a family member, and you happen to notice they do a really good job taking care of calves. And it occurs to you, maybe I should thank them for that. Well, you could say something like, you do a nice job caring for the calves. And that's good. That's better than just ignoring the fact that this person takes good care of the calves. But you can make that stronger. Start your sentence with the word I, and then share a feeling. Here the feeling would be admiration. I admire the way you care for the calves. That's a more powerful compliment. That's more intimate, because you've not just made an assessment. You've told him that you're feeling admiration for this person, or you could say, I'm grateful for the way you care for the calves, or I respect the way you, or I appreciate it. All those are feelings, okay? You can make it stronger yet if you would say, I admire the way you care for the calves, like when you stayed late last night to give colostrum to that newborn. Now you've attached that to a specific example. And this person now says, wow, he noticed, or she noticed. You noticed that statement. We all like to be recognized. We all like to be appreciated. Good morning, people. So when you're thinking, first of all, I would challenge yourself every day, ask yourself, have I thanked the people I should thank? Have I given out my 10 compliments? Come up with, well, I only got to thank the calf man. Try to come up with a specific example that you notice. And start your sentence with the way I say, I respect, I appreciate it, I'm grateful for the way you care for the calves, like when you, and let him know you notice a specific example. That's a very strong affirmation that will go a long ways to building loyalty and developing a workforce or a family unit that really wants to do a good job. Okay, second application, that is even more important when you want to voice a concern or a complaint. Now, I see a number of ladies in the room today. How many of the ladies here take care of paying the bills on the farm? I thought so. Quite a few hands went up. So this is specifically for you, okay? So you open this month's bills, and things are tight. The milk price is not great, but you're making it work. You're getting the bills paid. You're no concern. And you open this month's bills, and there's a bill you never expected for a new rotary mower. And it's a pretty significant bill. What are you thinking, and what are you going to say to the person who decided to buy that new mower and never told you about it? Yeah, guys. Well, whatever you might say, he probably deserves it. I'll pick on it. Well, we're going to talk about how might you communicate in the way that's the most effective. So you might say, you just don't care what a new equipment purchases do to our finances. You just don't care. So what's wrong with that? Okay, it's a judgment, first of all. You have judged the other person. And no matter how much they know it's true, right away that brings up defensive. And he's going to defend himself, okay? So you might say, well, he deserves that, but it's still not the most effective way to communicate. So a better way, start your sentence with the word I. And I feel like you're spending a lot on equipment. Okay? Or I feel that you don't take seriously the need to control our spending. Now there you started with the word I, and you use the word feel. But there's a feeling expected. Actually, there's not. And if you overhear yourself speak, as soon as you put the word that or like in there, you have shifted from sharing a feeling to sharing a perception, a thought, an opinion. So I feel like you're still judging him. You are spending, I feel that you don't take seriously. You softened it. It's not as harsh as saying you don't care. But there's a better way yet. How about I feel angry when I see unexpected charges on state? Okay, that's you share a feeling that, and the feeling is anger. And you might say, well, of course I'm angry. I'm trying to get the bills paid, things are tight, and he goes out and buys a new mower, he doesn't even count them. Well, I want to talk a little bit about anger. Anger is almost always a secondary emotion following primary. So what in the world do we mean by that? Well, primary emotions give rise to anger, disappointment, resentment, frustration, jealousy, and many, many times fear are what comes first, and then the anger. Okay, so let's just say on this particular farm, the wife is managing the finances. She's just about getting all the bills paid on time, but things are tight. He's concerned if enough price drops a little more, it might get rid. And now she opens a bill with a pretty big purchase on it that she knew nothing about, and that very well could trigger fear. Fear that we're just not going to make it. I can't handle one more bill. And then will come the anger. Okay? And usually it's the anger that comes out first, and husband gets hit with a lot of anger. And what does he do? He defends, he defends, he defends. And after a bit, maybe not in your house, but in my house, that would often lead to an argument, sometimes an ugly argument. So how could you do it differently? Well, when you're feeling angry, try to cool off before you talk to the other person. So if you're in the house in the morning and the mail comes in, you open the bill and you get this bill you weren't expecting, and the other person is out, maybe just try to cool off them. Okay? And then look for the primary emotion behind that anger and share that. So you might say, I feel excluded from decisions when I see unexpected bills. I feel worried. We won't be able to pay all that bill. I feel disrespected when you make major purchases without discussing them with me. Now, does that guarantee that you're going to have a harmonious and useful and productive discussion? No, it does not guarantee it. But it improves the odds significantly that you can talk about the real issue without getting hostile. And it just could be that if your husband or whoever the other person is understands better where you're coming from, he might just say, you know, she's right. I should have talked to her before I made that decision. The goal here is to understand each other. And once you understand each other, you're much more likely to treat each other in the way they would like to be treated. So another example, and this is a real story from a real farm. Father, son are working together. At this time, the father still owns everything, makes all the decisions. He'd say, let's see, in the late 50s, he was, I can remember the farm quite well, late 50s. And the routine there would be, he'd get up, he'd get things started, he'd get the cows and he'd start milking. But they also, the deal was, son was supposed to show up at about the same time, get the feed mixed, so that when the first cows left the parlor, feed was in the bulk weight. The problem was, son had trouble getting up. And I was present when more than one argument happened that often started out something like this. You're always late feeding the cow. You never care if they have feed or not. So two things wrong with that right off the bat. And the words always and never. So as soon as Dad says you're always late feeding the cow, where does son's mind go? Where does his mind go? You got the answer, right? Yeah, he's thinking, wait a minute, he's already disconnected from the real discussion. He said, no, wait a minute, last Tuesday, I was here right on time. And Dad's trying to think about last Tuesday, you know, already the discussion, there's actually going to be a discussion, it's sidetracked. Try your best to avoid the word always and never. It just takes the conversation in the wrong direction. So a better way would be if Dad would say, I feel that the cows are out of feed too long in the morning. So he started with I, and he said, I feel, but he immediately substituted a perception. I feel that cows are out of feed too long in the morning. If he were to phrase it, I feel concerned when I see the cows are out of feed in the morning. I'm afraid we're losing production. If you look at that sentence, he has not judged the son, he's not criticized the son, he's told the son how he feels when he sees the situation that occurs many mornings. Does that guarantee that the son's going to listen? No, it doesn't guarantee anything. But it improves the odds significantly that the son will feel less defensive. And maybe they actually talk about the issue, why it is that sons just can't seem to get there on time. Doesn't guarantee a good use of production. It certainly does not guarantee that the sun will change. But it improves the odds significantly that they can have a meaningful discussion without degenerating into an argument. Maybe they can just find a different way to do it. Maybe there's a farm employee who has no trouble getting up in the morning, could be assigned to feed the cows, and the son works later in the evening. I mean, there's any number of ways to solve it, but first you've got to have a discussion where two people are listening, two people care about arriving at a solution, and you're much more likely to get there if you use this little thing, eye to eye, so you get eye contact with the other person. You start your sentence with the word I, and then you tell them what's happening inside of you in response to this situation. I feel concerned when I see the cows are out of feed. I'm afraid we're losing production. It might say, I feel concerned about the cows being fed in a timely manner, or I feel disappointed that we're getting them fed, that we are not getting them fed on time. Or it might even be, I feel betrayed that our feeding protocols are not being upheld. So maybe they've agreed that Dad gets the milking started, son feeds the cows, but son doesn't keep his end of the bargain. So the dad might actually use, that's a strong word, but that may be a very accurate word. I feel betrayed that our feeding protocols are not being upheld. So there are lots of feelings. This is just a very brief list, but some that would be positive, happy, joyful, content, elated, blessed, wonderful, ecstatic, satisfied, exuberant. Or negative ones, sad, disappointed, resentful, frustrated, envious, depressed, excluded, unimportant, angry. The word unimportant often is relevant because when people aren't included in discussions or included in decisions, many times they feel, I'm just not important. Nobody bothers to tell me anything. Employees on farms would often vent to me that I don't even know what's going on. I have no idea what's going on. They'd like to be included in whatever the plan is and what's going on. Okay. The most challenging part of communication is what? Listening, right? Sometimes you should do nothing but listen and give no advice, give no suggestions. It's really, men are seen to be wired that we want to fix things. And many times, particularly if it's a spouse talking to us, They much prefer we just listen. So I'm going to suggest to you when anybody, not just a spouse, anybody, farm employee, son, daughter, parent, if you are the son, when you sense they just want to talk, work at really listening. Don't interrupt, don't give advice, don't be planning your response as they talk, because then you stop listening. Once you're thinking about your rebuttal, you could stop listening, and many times you'll miss something that was pretty important. Okay, third application I want to share with you on this whole eye-to-eye sequence is just building understanding. So let's use an example that you've just come in from the barn, you come in for breakfast, or you come in for lunch or whatever, and you've had a series of bad herd checks, too many of the cows, too many cows not telling eat, and you had another bad one today. Now, you might come in and just say to the family members that are there, well, I had no bad herd check. That's the end of the discussion. Well, they now know the fact, but it would be helpful to them to know how that's affecting them. And it might be, I feel disappointed. We've really worked hard to solve this problem and nothing seems to work. Maybe a little stronger. I'm really worried. Our herd is getting stale and it's going to get worse. Or maybe it's, I feel irritated with our herdsman. He's far too casual about this. Or I feel determined to get to the bottom. Those are four quite different feelings. The last one being somewhat upbeat, encouraging. First two being, concerned about it. And the third one is, totally different. I feel irritated. Now, why would you want to share that with the rest of the family? Because it helps them know how this is affecting you. And people, I got ahead of that. Feelings come from deep inside. When we share feelings, we let the other person in. Helps them to know us, to understand us, identify us, helps them to be caring and supportive of us. Again, kind of a stereotype, men are known for being tough guys. We don't share feelings. We keep it all inside. How many times have you heard somebody, after somebody, a father or a grandfather passed away, have you heard somebody say, I never really knew him. He never opened up. And I don't want to pass away and have people say, we never really, because he never shared it. So I'm going to encourage all of you, but men in particular, open up to your family a little bit. Let them see inside. Let them know what's going on. Stephen Covey wrote a book that I read, and really kind of a life-changing book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the things I got out of it was when we are in sort of a situation where there might be conflict, there might be disagreement, to approach that with the idea that I'm going to seek first to understand. Okay, which means I'm going to sit down with whoever else is involved, and I'm just going to listen. I'm not going to interrupt. I'm not going to contradict. I'm not going to make money. Just going to listen. And I can personally attest to you that that has worked in my favor many times. I know, Brian, this never happened to you, but I've arrived at a dairy farm where the farmer's a bit angry at me or something. Okay? And many times the conversation would start out and he'd say, I want to tell you something. And it might be about a bill, it might be about how I treated that people well. And I eventually learned, he starts out like that, I'm just going to listen. Okay? And once he has vented, and once I have said some things like, well, I see your point of view. I hear where you're coming from. I can understand why you think that way. Gradually, his anger goes down. Gradually, it goes down. And after a bit, he's done. And guess what? Now he's willing to listen to my point of view. And so that's the second one. Then seek to be understood. And in that first moments of exchange, there's no, I won't say never, but I try to discipline myself. I'm not trying to win the argument. I'm not trying to prove my point. I'm trying to understand his point of view, and then I want him to understand my point of view. Many, many times at the end of that, we'd shake hands, we'd be friends again, and we'd go on. Yeah, and really didn't matter. he wanted to be heard, okay? And if I demonstrated I'm willing to listen, many times that's all it took. Okay, that's an excellent approach for addressing a difficult time. Still have a couple. So I haven't talked at all about transition. Where would you think these topics might be useful when you start talking to family members about transitioning apart? Is there ever a conflict in that situation? I hear some. Absolutely. I'm gonna go back to my father-son story about the father who did the milking, got started on time every morning, the son who didn't. Let's just say that when son was in his mid-20s, Dad said, you know, one of these days, we're gonna have to start transitioning some stuff. And now 10 years later, and nothing's been done since. How do you think the son might bring that up? So, use your I statement. Well, first of all, should he bring it up right during the argument about feeding the cows? But you know, that's where it may likely come up, because the son is not, the father's kind of attacking the son, and the son, he's looking for some ammunition. Yeah, well, you told me 10 years ago, this, you know, that's how that is. Obviously, a better way would be when tempers are not high. If the son would say something like, you know, I feel concerned that you talked about transition to farm, but nothing's happened. I'm a little worried. What are your intentions? What is the plan? Do you think that would get a better response? Start your sentence with the word I, and share how the situation is affecting you. And I was present at a dining room table where often these discussions take place. The father in this situation, when he was 25 years old, his father had just turned it over to him, age 25. Now he's 65. And he has enjoyed running that farm successfully for 40 years. His son's now 35. Okay, numbers are pretty close. His son has nothing yet. And in that conversation, I can remember the son saying, I'm feeling anxious to get started doing some management on my own. And I can really remember the father sitting there looking at him and says, yeah, I understand. I think I'd feel the same way. Okay. Now, it doesn't always work like that. It's not always magic. And then that family figured it out. I like to quote Gary Hine. Jennifer, tell me if I'm quoting him accurately. He said, if you own and manage the farm for more than 30 years, you either stole it from your parents or from your children. So that I shared that quote at that table that day, and this individual had happened for 40 years. And kind of sadly, reluctantly, but knowing it was the right choice, he has since sold the cows to the son, and son is running the herd. So it can work. It can work better if you follow some of the guidelines when I started to summarize them. Communicate affirmation and praise, 10 compliments to 1 complaint. Me personally, use this eye-to-eye sequence. First, you get eye contact, then start your sentence with the word I. Tell your other person how their behavior or how the situation affects you in an emotional way. Share feelings. It really does help. And thank you. I probably have time for a question or two, or I can have it over to Brian.
Out of curiosity, 10 years when that son had entered that business, was the son one time before doing the feeding and all that, like was him running behind because the fact that it was not being like, was that like a culmination of things? Maybe.
Excellent question. If he starts to feel a little resentful, because nothing's ever said about doing this, so he just doesn't have a whole lot of enthusiasm to get like going. Sure, could be a part of it. Or could be that dad's thinking, you know, he can't even get to work. I'm not going to turn anything. Yeah. But never discussed at that level. So when you've got something bugging you, one of the worst things to do is just keep it to yourself. So let's say it wasn't, he really said that, he yelled at us. But he never says, you know, I really would like to turn some of this over to you, but I'm a little worried. You know, the fact is, you're often late for work, and I don't know that you're ready to take over. It's easy for me to give you examples. It takes a long time to change the way we talk. But if you think it through ahead of time and say, my first goal is to have my son understand me. Actually, I said that one. My first goal is to understand him. So you might start out saying, you know, we both kind of agree that cows don't have feed. It seems to me there's a lot of mornings that you're not here on time. What, can you explain to me what the problem is? Is it that you just can't get up? Is it you don't think it's important? Tell me what's going on that we can't accomplish it. Okay? And I don't know what the son might say. He might say, you know, Dad, maybe they start at 5. He said, Dad, you know what? I just seem to wake up more. Hard for me to be up. Could you start at 6? Maybe not the end of the world. Start at 6 instead of 5. Well, I'm saying though, until somebody brings it up in a way that they're really trying to understand the other one's point of view. And once they think they understand that point of view, now I'd like you to understand my point of view. We can make progress. If we start out with blaming, criticizing, things are going wrong. Okay, I'll be around. I'm sitting at this table. They've been considering me.